Broadly speaking, our study explores the changing education ecosystem from the standpoint of decentralization. Education policy today is increasingly influenced by overlapping networks of actors and interests. The interaction between public and private sectors has created a multifaceted landscape where financial and ideological connections dictate policy outcomes. The flow of influence in education policy is increasingly complex, with various stakeholders engaging in overlapping roles. Understanding these dynamics requires an in-depth exploration of financial contributions, lobbying efforts, influence, and policy advocacy, making transparency a critical issue. Florida's Education Savings Account, or ESA, policies are a great example of this dynamic, as they have evolved from an initial tax credit scholarship program aimed at targeted students to broader ESAs now available to all students across the state. This shift demonstrates a significant trend toward market-based educational reforms and increased school choice options for all families, which may or may not have been the original intent. Therefore, our study aims to map out nodes and clusters of influence within Florida's education policy landscape. A key objective is to present snapshots of how influence on the Florida Empowerment Scholarship Program has shifted over time, highlighting challenges in policy dynamics and the evolving roles of various actors in shaping legislation. These snapshots matter because as legislation morphs across sessions, new lobbying groups emerge, coalitions shift, and priorities evolve. Capturing these dynamics helps reveal not only who holds power explicitly, but also the indirect relationships that manifest over time. Using social network analysis, or SNA, the study identifies key stakeholders and their interconnections, offering a clearer understanding of influence, flows, and power structures. Our research question is as follows. What are the direct and indirect relationships between agents, policymakers, and legislation related to the Florida Empowerment Scholarship Program? This question guides an analysis of influence flows and the role of capital in shaping education policy in Florida. Our conceptual framework builds on Mazzoni's arena models, used to illustrate the multifaceted nature of educational decision-making in a contemporary ecosystem. It shows how different interest groups influence policy in complex domains like FESP. But increasingly, these decisions are occurring outside of visible arenas, growing more opaque within decentralized systems. We further use Bavella's metaphor from communications theory to illustrate the challenge of communication in decentralized networks. As new stakeholders emerge, cohesive policy development becomes more difficult due to fragmented information flows, in essence, making solving the puzzle increasingly difficult. To trace how private capital moved across networks, our methodology mapped influence across three layers: primary, secondary, and tertiary, using social network analysis. At the primary level, we identified direct ties between bills and the individuals, organizations, and firms that sponsored or lobbied them, our clearest lines of influence. The secondary level examined campaign contributions to those sponsors during the same legislative sessions, revealing financial support patterns behind policy momentum. At the tertiary level, we tracked shared affiliations, board memberships, executive ties, and cross-organizational roles to uncover more opaque structural connections. Data came from public legislative records, meeting logs, and two nonpartisan databases, Open Secrets and Follow the Money. We analyzed directionally who influences whom across time, capturing both visible and subtle relationships. This approach reveals how legislation like House Bill 3C didn't emerge in isolation, but through overlapping networks of recurring actors, aligned interests, and evolving influence strategies over time. Our results revealed a variety of observations. In our political network analysis, we identified 69 policymakers involved in FESP legislation. Notably, the Speaker of the House sponsored nearly one-third of the bills, reflecting concentrated leadership in shaping policy. This was not a surprise. Manny Diaz stood out as the most active legislator, sponsoring or co-sponsoring more FESP-related bills than any other. Shortly after our study, Diaz was appointed Florida's Secretary of Education, highlighting a clear path from legislative leadership to executive authority in education. Our analysis of lobbying network observations recorded 674 lobbying instances involving 192 lobbyists and 129 organizations. As expected, school choice advocates like Step Up for Students and the Foundation for Florida's Future played prominent roles. We also observe lobbying from school districts statewide, expected due to their direct stake in school choice policies. More unexpectedly, industry groups such as Building Officials Association of Florida and the Florida Concrete and Products Association were also active, possibly anticipating new school construction tied to expanded educational options. Our financial contributions overview traced over $1 million in campaign contributions to FESP sponsors over 4 legislative sessions. Ronald L. Book was the largest individual contributor, both personally and through his firm, highlighting his central role in Florida's political fundraising landscape. Corporations accounted for the majority of total contributions. While these contributions show significant financial alignment, further research is needed to determine whether shared policy interests or strategic alignments exist between donors and the specific legislators they supported. Understanding the true nature of overlapping connections in a complex, hyper-connected ecosystem has only just begun through this study. The policy environment reveals a dense web of public-private relationships, yet many traditional education voices appear to be underrepresented, raising important concerns about equity and democratic representation in the policymaking process. Social network analysis makes these complex relationships visible, surfacing both expected and hidden channels of influence. It offers a powerful tool for transparency in an increasingly complex and hyperconnected education policy ecosystem. Future research with AI and social network analysis could support real-time influence tracking through dynamic dashboards. This innovation opens new doors for transparency, equity, and smarter governance in a decentralizing policy ecosystem.